This episode is brought to you by Hasa. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the bottom feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hey, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to talk to you about algae and specifically how to detect or find the source of algae in a pool. And this is kind of important in treatment. It's something that's not talked about very often. So I'm going to unpack this a little deeper here for you today. Are you a pool service pro looking to take your business to the next level? Join the Pool Guy Coaching Program. Get expert advice, business tips, exclusive content, and get direct support. For me, I'm a 35-year veteran in the industry. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, I've got the tools to help you succeed. Learn more at swimmingpoollearning.com. Is algae in a pool inevitable? I would say yes and no. It's not something that is going to affect every pool on your route. It'll affect some pools more than others, and some pools will really never develop algae. And the key is to find out why a particular pool is getting algae in the first place. Now, a lot of it has to do sometimes with the foliage around the pool. Like in my area, we have a lot of oak trees, and certain times of year they're going to pollinate. You have also pine trees, and you have other trees that have a lot of pollen when they're pollinating or when they're in season. And this leads to an elevated level of algae in pools, of course. If you're in a wind-prone area, chances are you're going to have more algae as well because more stuff will blow into the pool from the surrounding area versus an area really with, cement deck, not too much wind, no trees around it. It's harder for that pool, I think, to develop algae from natural sources than from neglect. And so there are two areas I think that you have to focus on when you're thinking about the pools that have algae on your pool route. One area would be just the natural fact that pollen gets in the pool and algae may form in that pool depending on some other factors, which I'll touch on in a minute. And then you have the maintenance issues, which of course will cause algae as well in the pool. So finding the source sometimes takes a little thought. And some pools, again, are more prone to algae than others. Some pools have more dead areas, so there's a lot to do with circulation as well. You'll find that there are certain pools where you get a little bit of mustard algae, maybe on the step area of the pool, or maybe just a spot in the deep end, or sometimes in the spa when it's not circulating too well. And I would say that algae is formed mainly from the dead areas in the pool, areas where the water circulation doesn't really reach, and so it's not getting any kind of measurable chlorine in that area of the pool. It may also be a pool that has a lot of shadow or shaded areas of the pool where algae tends to form. So those are kind of some things that are hard to cure in some pools because you can't fix these dead spots usually. You can try to move return jets here and there, but some pools just have natural dead spots in them where algae will form in the pool. Now, there are things you can do to prevent the algae from forming in the pool in the first place, and these are kind of preventative things for all the pools that are helpful. Having a clean filter at the beginning of the season, to me, is number one. I clean my filters in February and March. That way I know that April, May, June, July, August, part of September, it's going to have a clean filter. And this really helps eliminate a lot of the algae, especially if you clean them before the springtime, where a lot of the natural algae gets into the pool in certain areas. This really helps a lot. Something else you can do is also make sure that there's enough runtime at the pools. Going from winter to spring to summer, sometimes you have to dramatically increase the runtime and circulation or flow of the pool to make sure that the algae is not forming in the pool. So these are factors that are definitely in your control. Cleaning the filter, increasing the runtime of the pool to make sure that, of course, there's plenty of water circulating in the pool. And circulation does two things, of course. It moves the water around, that's kind of important, but it also disperses the chlorine in the pool, and that's also very important. I don't know if you've had a D filter on your pool route that had a torn grid, or maybe you had a cartridge filter that was really old on your pool route, and you'll notice that the water is, I guess, circulating to some extent, but the chlorine is not being dispersed properly in the pool, and you'll notice that the chlorine level is really low in the pool. It's not lack of chlorine in a lot of cases, because it's mainly lack of the pool circulating and dispensing the chlorine properly in the pool. So that is a factor as well. So a clean filter, a functioning filter, doesn't have tears in the grids, newer cartridges. Now there's a rule that I kind of use out there. I change all the D grids in a D filter every 3 years. I change the cartridge filters, if there's a quad cartridge type filter, every 3 years. There's a couple exceptions. The Stay Right System 3 filters, I usually go 5 to 7 years with those cartridges. And for the quad D filters, I also go 5 to 7 years with the quad cartridge filters. But for standard D filters and the 4 quad type cartridge filter, I change those every 3 years. And that really helps prevent algae, because it really ensures that the pool is going to have really good elements going forward, and is something that is a factor with algae. Now, also, if you have a sand filter, you only want to backwash the sand filter when the PSI goes from the clean PSI, which is, let's say, 20, and it goes up by 10 PSI to 30. Then you backwash the sand filter. Over backwashing the sand filter actually has the opposite effect and makes it less efficient. So you only want to backwash your sand filter when the PSI rises by 10 over the clean PSI, and this will ensure proper circulation and disbursement of chlorine. Now, there's a big factor that I haven't touched on yet, which is an important factor, and this is, you'll see this in Bob Lowry's material, and I'm excited that Haas is going to have a video series on Bob Lowry's material coming out very soon on their website. And this is something that he talked about a lot when he did the podcast recordings with me, talks about a lot in his material, in his books, and this is the ratio that he discovered, and it's a complicated mathematical thing that he's just kind of boiled down for us, or made it simple for us, and that is that the free chlorine should be 7.5% of the cyanuric acid level in the pool. We kind of know that the cyanuric acid affects the effectiveness of chlorine more than the pH level in pools, and so Bob Lowry did a lot of research into the exact relationship between cyanuric acid, particularly high cyanuric acid, and the free chlorine level in the pool. We all have had pools out there where the chlorine level is blazing, but there's still algae in the pool, and we're kind of scratching our head trying to figure out, why is there algae every week when the chlorine level is at 10 parts per million? This shouldn't be. And even if you have good circulation, a clean filter, the algae can still develop in that. And yes, there is some chlorine-resistant algae, but there's another factor, and that is that your free chlorine level just isn't high enough for the pool to combat the algae with the chlorine level that you have in there. Let me give you a practical example, and this will explain why a pool with 10 parts per million would not have enough chlorine based on this factor. Let's just say that the cyanuric acid level, you tested it, and it's showing over 100 parts per million. And then you do a dilution test where you put bottled water and pool water, and then you do the cyanuric acid test, and it's showing still 100, which means that the chlorine level is probably above 200 parts per million at that point. So let's just say it's at 200 parts per million, and so you take 200 and you times it by 7.5%, and you're going to have a free chlorine level in this particular pool with a cyanuric acid level at 200 parts per million at 15 parts per million, which is not hard to do if you're using trichlor tablets, but then of course you're kind of adding to the problem because you're raising the cyanuric acid level as you're adding more tablets. And that's why sometimes when you begin the season you're using 2 tablets in the pool, then you go to 3 trichlor tablets, and by the end of the season you're using 4 trichlor tablets a week, because of this fact that you have to continuously raise the free chlorine level up to higher and higher levels to combat the ineffectiveness of the chlorine based on the higher cyanuric acid level. So if this pool has 10 parts per million of chlorine every day, but the cyanuric acid is at 200 parts per million, then you actually would need to be at 15 parts per million for the chlorine to be effective against the algae in the pool. And the Pool Guy Podcast Show has teamed up with UPA to bring you affordable, reliable liability insurance starting at just $64 a month. Get up to $2 million in coverage, and the members of my coaching group get an even lower rate. Protect your business and your peace of mind. Sign up with UPA today by clicking the link in the podcast description. So I would say this is a big factor for sure in kind of solving the mystery of why a certain pool gets a lot of algae in it. But if it's not an elevated cyanuric acid level, it could be other factors. I already touched on the filtration and the circulation as being contributing factors to this. Also, dead spots in the pool are a big contributing factor where there's really not much circulation going on in those areas and algae will develop. Now, there are some proactive things you can do to make algae development slower and also to maybe make the formation of algae even not possible in certain pools that have had algae problems in the past. And that is using what I've classified as a chlorine enhancer. There are several of these that work highly effectively. I did a season one time out there where I was just using enzymes and phosphate removers exclusively to kind of test them to see how effective they were in preventing algae in pools. In about 20 pools that would regularly get algae, I bought a bottle of phosphated enzyme, left it at the pool, and put the maintenance dose in there every week. And it was highly effective in preventing algae in these pools that were pretty prone to algae. So the phosphated enzyme, a phosphate remover and enzyme treatment is effective. And the phosphate remover is really good because it removes one of the food sources for algae, thereby making it much harder for the algae to actually grow and bloom in the pool. Another great thing you can do to prevent algae is to add borates to your pools to 50 parts per million. Now, no one really carries the borate product here locally, so I get my borates my boric acid powder from due2diesel.com. They'll FedEx it to your house. There's a little bit of a shipping charge, but for a 45-pound bucket, it's actually pretty affordable. And if you bring that pool to 50 parts per million, you can essentially eliminate algae growth in there. It also is a pH buffer, and it gives the water a little bit of a shine to it. How do you know how much borates to add to the pool? There's a calculator called the poolcalculator.com. It has a borate calculation formula in there. You can use that. And then you can buy borate test strips to test the borate level in the pools to maintain that 50 parts per million. Now, borates don't evaporate out of the pool. It's a lot like cyanuric acid where it stays in the pool. And so you don't have to add, the 50 parts per million the next season. You just need to add a maintenance dose going forward. And it's a natural algistat, which means it'll prevent the algae from forming in the pool or growing in the pool. It's a great preventative way to prevent algae. The other thing you can use is a mineral system like PoolRx. This is a great way to keep the algae from forming. It also eliminates microalgae, and it makes the chlorine much more effective. And this has some metals in it, copper, and it also has a couple other metals in there that will pretty much eliminate or prevent algae from forming in the pool because of the minerals that are introduced into the water. And the minerals are chelated, which means they're suspended. It won't fall out of solution and stain the pool as long as there's no metals present in the water prior to putting the PoolRx unit in the pool itself. And these are great ways to prevent algae from even forming in the pool. So that's a lot of information there, of course, and kind of finding the source of algae and some things that will help prevent it. I think one of the most preventative things you can do, and this is something that seems very basic, but it is something that can prevent algae in pools, regardless if you use the enhancers. And the thing is, brushing the pool walls is highly effective. Brushing the pool every week when you're at your service account, brushing the steps, brushing the spa, brushing all the walls down pretty vigorously, because as you know, algae actually forms by sticking on the wall of the pool. And if you brush the pool regularly, which I found, this really reduces the chance of algae forming. If you're a homeowner, you can brush the pool every day and you'll probably hardly get algae on your walls or in the pool because you're dislodging any kind of microalgae and brushing it up, and then the chlorine will effectively kill it. And brushing the pool is something that's vital and important. And I find that brushing the pool is extremely effective in algae prevention. If you kind of are not doing the full service at the pool, maybe you're vacuuming and skimming, but you're not thoroughly brushing the pool, you're actually doing yourself a disservice out there, because brushing the pool is a great preventative way, a great way to prevent algae from forming and growing on the pool walls and step areas of the pool. So try to isolate those certain pools on your pool route that do develop algae more than other pools, and you're going to find that this is very common, where a handful of pools will get algae every season, and a lot of pools will never get algae or hardly ever develop algae. And just kind of focus and kind of get those pools that do get algae often during the season, dial those pools in, use the enhancers, brush those pools, and kind of analyze all these factors, the cyanuric acid level, the flow, and the filtration. And you can really go a long way in preventing algae out there and saving yourself a lot of time on your pool route. Looking for other podcasts? You can find us on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. On the banner, there's a podcast icon. Click on that, and there'll be a drop-down menu with over 1,900 podcasts. And if you're interested in a coaching program, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.